Hey guys, and welcome to or back to the Pause in Pursuit podcast with your host, Summer Clark. This week's going to be a slightly shorter episode, but one that I think is quite important because I'm going to be debunking 5 common myths about competing at the top of agility. Okay, now these are 5 myths that I get a lot. I get people asking me how I feel about these and if they're true because they believe them. And honestly, it's quite concerning because none of them are true. They are all myths. Before we get into the episode, you're probably wondering, where's the weekly update, Summer? Well, I'm joking. No, probably no one cares, but still, I'm going to tell you. There isn't really one, to be honest, because I've still got a bit of a grumpy knee. Nothing to worry about. It's better than it was. For those who don't know, I just tweaked it at Hinckley, I think, because it was quite hard ground. And the morning after, it was just really sore. Basically, I just slightly overstretched the ligament on the inside of the knee, just on the when I'm looking down, right-hand side of the kneecap. So it's just a little bit sore. So I'm just not running at the moment. I'm having 3 weeks off running and then coming back for the 0.0 IQ, which is next Saturday on the 20th. So I'm sure it'll be fine by then. Like I said, it's already been half that time and it's a lot better, but I'm still going to be super careful. So I was meant to be at Thames 6th and 7th, but I was like, you know what? I've got everything. I've got all the qualifiers, done all the things, all the 3 out of 3 goals ticked off for the season. Why bother? It was terrible weather on the Saturday and I was like, well, I won't be doing that anyway. And then Champ on the Sunday, I was like, well, that's a long way to go just for one day and on a grumpy knee. I don't think so. Not with EO 6 weeks away. So I just withdrew and had a really nice non-agility weekend for a change, which, not going to lie, after 6 weeks straight of agility on the weekends, I needed. I think we both needed, to be fair, me and Arrow. So yeah, it's been nice to have a week just, not hammering the agility for once. And yeah, so nothing really to update you guys on, just business as usual, teaching, chilling, eating, all the things, all the things that I do that aren't agility. But anyway, that is the brief weekly update. So let's get straight into these 5 common myths about high level agility, okay? And when people approach me and say, basically bring these up, it not upsets me, but it kind of frustrates me because I'm like, where are people getting these things from? And I feel like it is holding a lot of people back in the agility world. So I'm going to debunk them for you today. Myth number 1 is you must train every day to compete at your level. This kind of does irritate me because that could not be further from the truth, okay? To compete at high level agility, you do not have to and should not train every single day, okay? If you train every single day, you will probably find that you will become rather burnt out, okay? And both you and your dog will become way more susceptible to injury, okay? So not only will you have niggles, injuries, stuff like that, and then not be able to compete, you will also get extremely emotionally injured in the sense of burnout, as in you'll get sick of it. You just will. If you train every single day in agility, you will not enjoy it the same. Okay, you will get sick of it. If you did anything every day, you'll probably get sick of it. Think of work. Okay, there's probably some people that don't get sick of working every day, but the majority of us, even me, and I'm doing my dream job, think same old, same old, same old, same old. That's just how life is. Like, we get used to things, novelty wears off. Okay, so if we're doing agility every single day, it is going to lose the enjoyment. It is going to lose the fun as well. And I've already felt that a little bit this season, hence why I'm actually quite glad that I had to take an enforced break and not go to Thames at the weekend, because on the Sunday of Hinckley, obviously we won the champ ticket on the Saturday. I was running the Sunday and I was like, oh, I'm just tired. Like, I'm just tired and just feel like I've just keep plugging away. And it's been a lot. And that's just competing every weekend. So training every day, like imagine how sick you'd get of it. Don't do that, okay? It's the worst idea ever. I mean, again, training is subjective, okay? So some people may think training as course running. Some people may think training as skills. Some people may think training as like little tiny foundation things, like maybe your strength and conditioning or a bit of start line training on a walk or something. That's slightly different, okay? Because you can do little things like that just on your walk, your start line, your middle, your lead out, you're okay. stuff like that you can do every day, little bits like that, and it not cause an issue. But training physical agility equipment every day is actually extremely detrimental. Okay, so for context, I compete or I like to think I compete at the top level of agility, and I train once or twice a week. I train once a week if I'm competing at the weekend, and I train twice a week if I'm not competing at the weekend. So I have my regular weekly group class with Lucy on a Wednesday, and then that's it for the week if I'm competing on the weekend. Okay. And if I'm not competing on the weekend, I will do an extra session at my field on the weekend. Okay, so once or twice a week training, once if I'm competing the weekend. So the most I do is 3 days of agility training. And obviously days in between that, I'm doing arrow strength and conditioning. You know, I'm doing my gym work, my strength and conditioning. You know, we're walking, we're doing little bits, you know, like on a walk. Yeah, maybe I'll get him to do his start line weight, but you know, just for a treat or his ball or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's not agility related. It's just for fun and because I like engaging with my dog, you know? So I don't think that counts as agility training really. So yeah, that is well and truly debunked. Like training every day to even at, like no one should be training every day in agility, never mind at the top level when it actually gets more intense. You want to be conserving your energy, and you know, especially when us lot competing at the top level have things like EO coming up, AWC, you know, competing for GB, we want to be conserving our energy and conserving our dogs and making sure that no injuries happen and we peak at a certain time. So yeah, that's such a myth, and it's actually the opposite of what is actually true. Okay, so please don't do that. None of us do that. Okay. Myth number 2. Dogs that compete in high-level agility must have to retire early. So this is also quite irritating because I think any of us as handlers and dog owners and agility trainers and all the things, the goal is to stretch our dog's agility career out for as long as possible. We all aim for longevity in the sports and our dogs' careers. The only way that a dog's agility career would end early and a dog would have to be retired early is A, an injury that, you know, like a severe injury that they can't safely come back from. For example, they tear something majorly and have to have surgery and it's not safe to do it after. But even then, often it is still possible in the future. But, you know, they may have to retire early from that. An illness that means they're unwell and agility isn't suitable or safe for them. Or, you know, some dogs just do have to retire earlier than others, just because of how they're built, their genetics, stuff like that. Okay, so again, the age at which a dog retires from agility is very subjective. Ethel, so for example, I compete arrow at the top level of agility. Arrow competes at a higher level of agility than Ethel did when I was running Ethel. Ethel retired at 8. Arrow is coming up to 7, and he is just peaking now, I feel, and I'm hoping we'll be going for many, many more years into his double digits and, yeah, for as long as possible. He will not be retiring at 8 unless something awful happens next year, which I really hope doesn't. There are some things we just cannot control, we cannot see coming, but as it stands, Arrow is going to surpass Ethel's 8 years of retirement. 8 years old, when she retired. And Arrow competes at a higher level than Ethel ever did. Okay, so that if that doesn't prove this myth wrong, then I don't know what does. I think as well, when dogs have to retire early, so Ethel, yes, 8 is quite early for an agility dog to retire, really, but she was not built for it. Okay, she was not physically built for it. I did all her strength and conditioning work on a regular basis. She saw a physio, she got treatment, stuff like that. But she just wasn't physically built for the sport, like Arrow is, for example. Her breed, her structure, her genetics, stuff like that. I could see she was struggling. I thought, no more, let's not put her through any discomfort. Let's not make her more likely to get things like arthritis when she's older, stuff like that. And yeah, I could tell she just wasn't enjoying it anymore and she was physically struggling. So I made that call. She may have been able to go on for longer if I'd pushed her through it, but I would never do that. If I see a dog struggling, that's just not nice. It's not fair. You know, we ask our dogs to do agility. We need to take responsibility for that decision because they can't make that decision for themselves, even if they're struggling. So yeah, I think that's a massive myth. And also, I think when people hammer their dogs at a young age and teach things super quickly and do a lot, and even then, some dogs do just pick things up really quickly. Like, some people may teach their young dog all the things that they should be learning at that age, but they just pick up things really quickly and progress really quickly. But that person could still only be doing a couple of sessions a week or lots of little low impact safe skills, and the dog's just a super genius fast learner and just progresses faster. And then people are like, oh, they must have hammered their dog and done way too much training with it and stuff at a young age. But that's not necessarily the case. Like, maybe their dog was just a super fast learner. So in that case, no, they're probably not going to have to retire early because that dog's just a fast learner, but it actually hasn't done any more high impact training than any other dog, if that makes sense. So again, don't judge trainers or dogs or anything like that just from what you see on the surface in the videos they post on social media and the runs they do in competition, because you don't have a clue what's gone on behind the scenes. You don't know how many training sessions they've done. You don't know how fast or slow that dog learns, you know. I think people are very quick to assume, oh, this person's hammering their dog, they're doing way too much training. Usually people look at sort of the top level, high level handlers and competitors and assume that. And it's actually not the case at all. Like, those people are actually more likely to know and understand the dangers of doing too much too soon with the dog, and are actually probably less likely to do too much than more novices or new handlers, because they've got the knowledge there. Whereas newer handlers and competitors, through not necessarily any fault of their own, might not even know that. They might not even be educated on how detrimental it is to do too much too soon. So again, I think there is no correlation that I know of between high level agility and dogs having to retire early. I think the level that you compete your dog at is irrelevant. Like, agility is still agility, and often dogs that compete at a high level are sometimes more looked after and more thought goes into preserving them and, you know, the longevity of their career because they're a top level athlete. So I could argue the opposite to that, to be honest. So that's definitely a myth. It has nothing to do with the level of agility. I mean, yes, a lot of work goes in and stuff to competing at the top level, but why people seem to assume that us handlers competing at the top level of the sport don't do it sensibly and we just do way too much, whereas it's actually very strategically planned out and thought out with the dog's best interest at heart. And our years are planned so meticulously in order to, you know, again, I say quality, not quantity, in order to get the work done with as little impact as possible. That's what we're all thinking about, okay? So that assumption and that myth is definitely an irritating one and is certainly not the case. Myth number 3, I want to compete in high-level agility, but I can't afford everything that goes into it. Okay, now, again, people assume, and I understand why, people assume that top-level agility is extremely expensive to take part in. Now, yes, it's not cheap, but agility isn't cheap anyway. And again, it depends on the person and their priorities, their wage, their, you know, everything. There's so many factors into spending when it comes to agility. You know, say a handler could spend everything they earn that's not bills and obviously stuff like that, on agility and think it's manageable. Someone else could have expensive cars, expensive clothes, other things outside of agility to pay for and think, God, agility is expensive, I don't have enough for it. Okay, so that just depends on the person and the priorities, and there isn't a right or wrong. But again, I don't think high-level agility... The only thing I think about high-level agility that's more expensive than, you know, average-level agility is the trips abroad. So when you're competing for your country and travelling abroad, yes, they do get expensive. But again, there's ways around that. Sharing the trips, sharing the fuel costs, driving together, sharing accommodation costs, staying in an Airbnb with several team members, stuff like that. There's ways to make it cheaper, okay? Maybe if you have a caravan, camping there instead of hoteling, stuff like that. Like, it's workaroundable, if that makes sense. That's not a word, but you get what I mean. So there's ways to make it affordable if you really look into it. Also, those, I think people don't realise as well, those trips abroad for us GB handlers are our holidays for the year. I mean, I'm sure some of us, I don't, but I'm sure a lot of people do, if they have the funds, go on non-dog holidays throughout the year too. But I personally don't. At the moment, I put all my money that I'd use for a holiday into going abroad for GB. So that is my holiday of the year. Of course, if you still want a normal, quote unquote, holiday outside of agility, it's going to feel really expensive to travel abroad for agility on top of that. But if that is all you're doing abroad that year, then it's just the same as, you know, going on holiday away from agility, you know, in the summer or something like that. And yes, I know there's other costs involved and you know, animal health certificates and stuff like that. But again, it's not cheap. I'm not saying that, but I think you can, there's a way around it, okay? And what's affordable to one person isn't to another, and vice versa. And yes, maybe high level agility is too expensive for some people, but you know, it very much depends on priorities and what you're earning. Like, everyone earns a different wage. What's expensive to one person isn't to another. But again, I think someone who's competing at, again, quote unquote, average level agility, there's still a lot of spending potential in that. You know, someone who's competing at an average sort of novice level of agility can actually end up spending more on agility over the course of the year than a top level handler competing for GB or abroad. Because maybe that novice handler is camping at, or, you know, not camping because that's cheaper, doing every single show every weekend throughout the year, the whole course of the show, so 2 or 3 days each weekend, you know, staying in a hotel for all of that, eating out every night for that. They can rack up more of an expense than, say, a handler competing for GB that doesn't compete that often throughout the season, but does training at their own venue, for example, as prep, which is free, and then just uses their money on the trip abroad, if that makes sense. So again, it depends. It's not, I don't think there's top level agility is so much more expensive than sort of novice level of agility. Depends on the person. You know, novice handlers can choose to spend loads on agility if they really want to, just like a top level handler competing for GB can be really careful about what they spend their money on during the year and prioritise and do less leading up to, you know, less expensive trips, expensive competitions around those expensive trips abroad, if that makes sense. So, you know, it's all different. I don't think the myth of high level agility equals skint. I don't think that's a fair correlation because there's so much that goes into it. Also, I think everything that goes into it, I think people have said before, like, regular physio appointments, you know, supplements, stuff like that, a good diet. Well, to me, those things aren't correlated to high level agility. They're just correlated to agility. I think every agility dog that's competing regularly or even just training regularly should be seeing a physio semi-regularly, okay? Even if it's every 6 weeks, even if it's every 2 months, I think dogs should be, any dog that does agility should be seeing a physio regularly anyway. I don't correlate that to only dogs competing at high level of agility need that. That's not the case at all, in my opinion. Same with supplements and a good diet. I think any dog that's doing agility, no matter the level, should be having these things. So again, I don't think that those kind of quote unquote extras, which to me they're not extras, they're necessities. But, you know, some people may think, you know, if someone's competing at a lower level, they may think only high level agility dogs need those things. But in my opinion, all agility dogs need those things if they're doing a lot of agility, no matter the level, no matter whether it's competition or training. Okay, but it's the well-being of the agility dog. Okay, no matter the level. Because our dogs don't know what's high level and what's not. They just know that they're running a course and a lot of impact is going through their bodies. Okay, so You know, we control the level, we control that kind of thing. And yes, I know high level agility courses are probably a bit more challenging physically, but again, that can be managed. You know, actually a lot of us, and I've been doing a lot more of this year, we do less runs. We go to a competition and we maybe do 2 runs, you know, like just the champ runs or just the IQ runs. Whereas a lot of novice handlers will be doing their full 4 runs a day. So really, we're doing less. Yes, maybe the courses are more demanding on the dogs' bodies, but we're doing less. So it balances out, if that makes sense. So there's a lot more that goes into there is a lot more that goes into it than just that sort of black and white myth. It is not black and white. There is nothing black and white about it. Myth number 4, you can't compete in high level agility unless you teach it for a living. Now, this is an interesting one because as most of you, well, pretty much all of you now, because I plug it in every episode, will know, I teach agility for a living. Now, I've only been doing this for the past 8 months, and I did compete. I competed in high-level agility before I did that, okay? Before I did that, I worked in marketing. I worked online, essentially a desk job for a while. And yes, it was from home, but I did have to sit there for a certain amount of hours in a day. Yes, I could be at home with the dogs, but I wasn't teaching agility. I wasn't out in an agility field. I still had to be at my computer for a set amount of time a day, like a normal job, quote unquote normal job. And I still did compete in agility at the high level. Okay, I was still competing at Crufts. I was still competing for Team GB at this point when I didn't teach agility for a living. And also another thing, now I do teach agility for a living. You don't have any more time to actually do agility than if you had a different job, I don't think. And again, it's very subjective. It depends how busy you are. So someone with a desk job that works, maybe you've got a desk job and you work 6 hours a day, but maybe you teach agility and you work 8 hours a day. So you actually in that case would have less time teaching agility than having the desk job, because it's not what you do, it's how long you do it for. And yes, teaching agility for a living does mean that you have obviously your venue to teach at and your full set of equipment to teach on, so you can use that to train your own dog. However, that's still possible if you don't teach for a living. You can still rent a field and buy a full set of equipment if you don't teach agility for a living. Okay, especially when you're starting out. Like when we're starting out as agility instructors, we don't have a ton of money to start with, like starting any new business. Okay, so it doesn't really mean anything in that sense. If you have a non-agility job, then chances are you might even be on a better wage than people that teach agility. So you can still rent your field and buy your equipment and train your dog. You can set courses and train your dog on high level, quote unquote, high level courses, European style courses. Okay, so that doesn't correlate at all. And I think a lot of people think, people that teach agility for a living have more time to train their own dogs. Well, not really, because we're still spending that time training everyone else's dogs. And also, after a day of teaching agility, sometimes the motivation and the drive and the energy to train our own dogs is lower because we've been surrounded by agility all day long. I mean, this goes back to earlier in the podcast episode where I said about, burnout and the novelty wears off and doing one thing for so long. So I think it can actually have the opposite effect, and we want to sometimes train our own dogs less after teaching agility. Whereas, if you had a normal job, quote unquote normal job, standard job away from agility, you'd finish your day doing that and then be buzzing to train your own dog in agility because you haven't done it all day and you want to do your hobby. And when we teach agility, it turns into work. Of course it does, which I'm not complaining about. But again, there's always other sides to it. So I don't think, yes, it seems that I understand where this myth has come from in the sense of a lot of us that do compete for Team GB, for example, do teach agility for a living and have a business in it. But I don't think that isn't the reason we're on Team GB or compete at a high level. Often it's the other way round. We start out by having a non-agility job, start competing at the top level and succeeding, and then we kind of start thinking, I'm all right at this, maybe I could teach it. So it's often not it's that way around. It's never usually start teaching agility and then compete and then reach the high level of agility with our own dogs. It's often the other way round. It's the doing it as a hobby and becoming decent at it and starting to compete at a high level that makes us think, actually, maybe I could switch my job up now. Maybe I could change this quote unquote normal job for teaching agility. So, there's a different perspective to think about. But in my opinion, you can compete at a high level of agility without teaching it for full time for a living. I think the only thing that makes it easier to compete at high level and teaching agility as well is that yes, I think teaching agility also does improve my understanding of the sport and handling and stuff, because I'm constantly surrounded by it. I'm constantly watching it. I'm seeing and dealing with a lot of different dogs and handlers, and teaching other people about lines and handling maneuvers. So I'm just, my brain is just absorbing more of that. Yes, I get that. And also being self-employed and teaching agility means we can give ourselves time off for, competitions that are maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then obviously going abroad for a couple of weeks to compete for Team GB. But again, that's not just because we teach agility, that's being self-employed. Okay, you could be self-employed in anything and be able to give yourself that time off as well. And also, even if you do work an employed position, then you can use your holiday, your allocated leave, your annual leave for the year for those things. So I don't think that, the fact that the myth that you can't compete in high level agility unless you teach it for a living is absolute bollocks. Like, that's just not the case at all. Obviously, there's things that make it easier and things that help. But that, again, just that black and white myth is just very, very false. Okay. And I do not rate that. Finally, then, myth number 5, the last myth I'm going to be talking about today, is you should only enter Champ, IQs, Open Showcase and Crufts/Olympia qualifiers if you actually have a chance of winning them. Now, this is something that I have honestly just, I've heard this so much. It's actually tragic. And so many of my students have said that as well. Like, oh, I'm not going to, they have a grade 7 dog, but they're like, I'm not going to enter Champ. I'm not going to enter the IQs. I'm not going to do Open Showcase. There's no point trying out for GB or doing Crufts or Olympia qualifiers because I'm not going to win it. And then they start listing off the people in their height that they're going to be against. And they're like, I'm not one of those. They're going to beat me anyway. I don't have, we're not on that level, stuff like that. And that annoys me because where's the rule? Where is the rule? Like, what is the rule for entering Champ? You have to be grade 7. Are you grade 7? Yes. So why you meet the criteria? Why are you talking yourself out of it? A lot of people are worried about looking stupid. Well, even people like me who do compete at a high level have plenty of runs where they just look completely stupid. Okay. It's just being human and dog. Okay. IQ, same thing. Why not try? All you have to do is win one class of an IQ throughout the whole year. One class could be a jumping and you qualify for the next year's Team GB process, tryout process. Okay. Anyone can do that. Okay. And then, as well, just I think people think, oh, I'm up against the quote unquote top handlers in the country and stuff. We still make so many mistakes. Like, honestly, just look through the results at a show and you'll see most of us we all get E's. We all get faults, it's not like we're immune. It's not like we only ever go clear. Okay. So, we're beatable, like, easily. Do you know what I mean? Like, so easily. And then, so IQs. And then maybe, you get the chance to try out for GB and you talk yourself out of it because, I'll never get on anyway and stuff like that. Same with Open Showcase. Open Showcase, as the name suggests, is open. You can just enter it. And people think, oh no, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, stuff like that. Well, how do you know until you do it? Open Showcase courses from start of this year, looked lovely, really, really nice, and just think of it like a normal competition. You're just going to Dog Sports Derby and running some courses. Like, people deep the sort of quote unquote meaning behind it too much. Like, they deep the outcome, they deep what it is, what it's for, who's watching, way too much, instead of just thinking, actually, it's something to do with my dog at a really cool venue. Often, at the start of the year when there's not too much else on, often, like, why not? Why not have a go? And then you can see where you're at, what you need to train, how close or far away you are from that level. And then you can strive for it next year. And I'm not saying that everyone who's eligible for these things has to enter these things, if that makes sense. Like, if you really, really, really don't want to enter Champ, IQs, Open Showcase, Cross Qualifiers, Olympia Qualifiers, don't, that's fine. But I'm talking about these people that want to deep down, and they say they'd love to, but then they say, no, I don't have a chance of winning it. That's not the point, okay? Especially stuff like Open Showcase, which is, it's there for experience, young partnerships, young dogs, people that just want to, get a feel for GB, stuff like that. If you want to do it, that's what it's there for. You don't have to have a chance of winning everything to enter it, okay? I enter Champs, and yes, I've won them before, but sometimes I've had plenty. I think it took me 4 or 5 champs this year to get the ticket. And the others just went, they went tits up in the final. But, so I didn't have I didn't win that one. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not, anyone, it can be anyone's day, okay? I don't think you should ever say, I don't have a chance of winning, so I'm just not going to enter. Same with Crufts and Olympia. I always say, and I've had, again, students say this, am I ready to enter Crufts or Olympia qualifiers at normal shows? And I say, don't even think about what it is. Like, don't think that's a Crufts qualifier, that's an Olympia qualifier. Think, I'm going to this show anyway, it's just another normal run. Like, you've maybe got graded agility, graded jumping, combined jumping, and then say, KC Stakes agility. That's your 2 agilities, 2 jumping for the day. It doesn't have to be this, this is a Crufts qualifier, this is an Olympia qualifier. Just run it like you would any other run and let the result come. Like, if you happen to qualify, happy days, you win another run at another event. Do you know what I mean? Like, anyone has a chance of winning anything. Anything can happen on the day. Us quote-unquote top handlers cock up so much, like plenty of times, because that's the sport. So again, you just can't think like that. You just can't think like that. If you want to enter these things and you don't think you have a chance of winning, enter them anyway just to run, like a normal run. Honestly, there's nothing in the rules that says you can only enter these things if you have a chance of winning. Because what is a chance of winning? What is that? Who doesn't have a chance of winning? What if all the super, super fast dogs go wrong? That's happened so many times. If you're out there thinking your dog's too slow to win, but all the fast dogs go clear, then there you go, If it's a really tricky course, and often it is, so, you need to give yourself the chance before you say if you have a chance of winning or not, okay? And, I think that's a myth where people just get way too het up on the outcome instead of the process, and that is the most dangerous thing you can possibly do as an agility competitor, okay? So those are the 5 myths that have been hopefully absolutely debunked today. Hopefully I've managed to change some of your mindsets around those things. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, please do leave the podcast a 5-star rating and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and also make sure to follow the podcast if you're not already on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you stream your podcast. That would mean the world to me, and then you also won't miss any future episodes coming up. I have some cool guests in the back of my mind that I still need to sort out and reach out to, but they're coming. So as long as you're following the podcast, you're not going to miss those. Also, please do keep sending me your podcast topic requests and recommendations. So things you want me to talk about in solo episodes just by myself, and also future guests you would like to see on the podcast in the future, and what you would like me to talk about topic-wise with those guests. You're pretty much guaranteed to get your idea turned into an episode because I'm just that nice to you all. So send those in. You can send those in on social media, at Pause in Pursuit or Summer Clark on pretty much all of the platforms. Also, make sure to follow me at Pause in Pursuit or Summer Clark on all of the social media platforms. That is where you can keep up to date with me, with Arrow, with what's going on. And I also advertise my guest episodes there as well. So Instagram is where I advertise those, and you can send in your questions for the guests that I advertise. I also offer in-person agility lessons in Lincoln. So if you'd like a one-to-one with me, or you would like to join one of my current group classes, then please do get in touch and I can tell you my availability, what group classes I'm currently running, stuff like that, and we can get a lesson booked in. I would love to help you guys with the rest of your agility season. If you have any training issues or you would just like to level up, I would love to help you all. So please get in touch about that if you fancy a lesson. Also, treat yourself to a training aid, whether you need a weave guide, a stride regulator, anything like that. Please do use my link, which you can find in the description of this podcast episode, to Safe Stride Solutions, and treat yourself, because honestly, their training aids have been a saviour for me, not only with my own training with Arrow, but also with my teaching, and they have helped so many of my students. It is unbelievable. So please do head over to my link and treat yourself to something. If there is something you're struggling with, then a training aid is exactly what you need. You don't have to use it forever. You can phase it out absolutely fine, but it's just going to help you out if you're struggling, or if your dog is struggling with a certain piece of equipment, or you just want to do something like tighten up their turns on a wing. There's a training aid for that, and it just speeds up the process, makes it clearer for your dog, easier for you, and yeah, happy days. So please do use that link if you are interested. I think that's everything I ramble on about in my little outro. Again, over the next week, I have nothing particularly exciting coming up. Another weekend off competing. I do have a few of the GB mediums coming to my venue on Sunday. We're going to do a bit of training Sunday morning. Obviously, I'm just going to be doing distance handling with Arrow still. Another week and 2 days off for me, and then I will be at Point Zero IQ on the 20th, either with a fully healed knee or plenty of straps on my knee. Either way, I'm running it. Sure, it'll be fine by then. That is the good thing with being cautious and catching things early. But yeah, that is it for this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I will speak to you all next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Bye, guys.